All right, today we're looking at the Ascaso Steel Duo Plus. Now, this is kind of the top end of Ascaso's steel line, extremely popular. And in this video, we're gonna look at all the things that differentiate it from the regular Duo and how it compares to all the models below that. I'm gonna tell you all the things that I love about this machine and the whole line actually, as well as some things that I maybe don't love quite as much. We're gonna go on a bit of a tech deep dive on just a handful of things just to make sure that you're fully informed, and ultimately we're going to try and answer the question, should you be considering this machine? And if you have actually picked one of these up recently for yourself, I'm going to go over some stuff that's going to be very helpful for you too. This unit was sent to me by my partners at Espresso Parts. They sell the Ascaso line of machines in the US through their site, as well as the Ascaso USA site. They also sell La Marzocco's, they sell Slayers, Sinesso's, all the big names in commercial espresso. Now they've got a discount link for this machine and all the Ascaso machines actually, which I'm going to drop down in the description there and keep updated for you guys as well. The Plus is definitely not a budget machine. You know, it comes in at around 2,100 bucks, just under. It is a dual Thermoblock machine. It has PID temperature control on both the espresso and the steam. It has volumetric, so shot programming by volume. Sort of. We're going to get to that, as well as adjustable pressure and pre-infusion. Overall, that's a pretty impressive feature list for the price. It comes in black, white, and this finish is called inox, but it's kind of just like a stainless steel. Now, really quick orientation on how this machine works. On its face, it's actually pretty simple. You have a power switch here, up for off and down for on. The next switch is for pulling espresso. So down will be your 2 coffee setting or your double setting, and up will be your single or 1 coffee setting. The next switch over here is for hot water. So when you flick that down, hot water will come out of this tap right here. And the last switch over here is to engage the steam pump. Now, it won't start steaming right away when you do that. You will hear that chug, chug, chug of the steam pump, but it won't be until you open the valve with this lever right here that the steam will actually start coming out. We also have a little LCD panel down here with these 2 buttons. We'll go over some of those settings here in a minute, and a pressure gauge right here. This is pretty cool actually. It shows the pressure actually at the group rather than what the pump is generating. So what you see here is 1-to-1 what your coffee is experiencing in here. That's great. A couple other really quick things that are just really convenient. The side loading water reservoir, you know, you can pull it out just a little bit and fill it up rather than pulling out the whole water reservoir. That's really nice. Also, this drip tray just slides out super easily, makes cleanup very convenient. When you do first turn it on, the second light will blink, and that will tell you that the machine is in the process of heating up. So generally before you do any pulling of espresso, you want to make sure that both those lights are solid. Just FYI. Now, about those Thermoblocks that are kind of inside here. A Thermoblock machine is pretty fundamentally different from a traditional or boiler style espresso machine. You can think of boilers in espresso machines like little hot water tanks. They're kind of these big chambers generally inside there that fill up with water, and the machine will heat them up. Whereas the Thermoblocks are more like an on-demand water heater. They have this metal heating element and tubes kind of run through them in a coil, and the water is fed through on demand, and it heats it up on the way through until it gets to where it's going to go. They're generally quicker to heat up, less prone to scale buildup, more energy efficient, and unlike a boiler, they're going to deliver you fresh cold water from the reservoir every time. You know, a boiler will hold this mass of water and heat it up, and then when you turn the machine down, it'll cool down and then heat up again and then cool down again. In a machine like this, it's just going to deliver you fresh water every time. But thermocoils have a little bit of a bad rap, and that's because they've been used for a long time in very cheap low-end machines with pretty poorly designed Thermoblocks. Now, personally, I'm a big fan of this tech. I think it could actually be the next wave in, you know, home enthusiast espresso. It's got a lot of advantages, and when it's executed well, it can be really great. Unfortunately, Ascaso has executed this type of tech very well in this line of machines. You see decent espresso using this type of tech as well. Very nice machines there. Thermocoil tech does have its disadvantages too, and we're going to get there, but on the whole, it's cleaner, faster, and more efficient. As far as fit and finishes go, everything is looking and feeling really nice. Just personally, I find the machines look very good. They have this kind of modern European vibe with these straight lines. The entire outside casing is metal. The switches are very robust feeling. The woods that they've chosen on their portafilters is fantastic. Very hefty, feels like a nice beefy piece of equipment. Now, at this point, I think we should probably make some espresso. So I've got 18 grams of beans here. I'm just gonna plunk it on here, give things a little shake, give it a little tap, tamp, and we'll give this a pull. Now what I'm gonna do here is I am going to hold down this 2 coffee switch and just let it run until we get, 36 to 40 grams of espresso output. All right, perfect. So that was 36 grams in about 28 seconds. All right, now because I was holding that switch down, that means I was running it in programming mode. So if I were to grind up that coffee again at the same grind setting, pop it in there, same dose, everything, I could just flick that down and it would run the same program. But let's see how it tastes. Okay, that is really good. This is a coffee roasted by Corvus Coffee Roasters. It's a Colombian from Santa Monica farm, and it's a natural carbonic maceration coffee. So that's a very fruit forward coffee. I'm getting like strawberry and lemon Jolly Ranchers. Very tropical, very fruit forward, very sweet. Nice sticky sweet mouthfeel. Maybe even a little passion fruit in there. Really good. And if all you care about is, on the whole, is this machine worth what it costs and does it make excellent coffee drinks? Then the answer is yes. But if you go down a couple layers on it, that's when things really start to get interesting. First of all, the steel line from Ascaso has several variants that all kind of look similar and come in at different prices. How does the Plus differ from the Ascaso Duo, which costs about $200 less? The most obvious difference is this steam wand up here. The standard Ascaso Duo comes with this knob on the side to open the valve. This steam handle is the same as on the big machine, the Baby T, and the experience of just pulling it down and having that steam pressure there, rather than feeling like you're unscrewing this knob on the side, it really is a bit of an improved experience, but it's not actually any change in performance. It's just a user experience thing. Now, a conversion kit does exist for the standard Steel Duo, but it's like nearly impossible to get your hands on. Next up is an upgraded shower screen under here. This is a nice little touch. It's a removable part that you could buy separately and put on, but out of the box, that's going to give you a little bit more even flow as the water is kind of raining down onto your espresso puck. And a third big difference is this drip tray right here. Now, this drip tray is a little bit different than the standard punched drip tray on the regular Duos. It's got this removable grate, which does make things a lot easier for cleaning. The Baby T has something very similar. And I'll be honest, I'm not the hugest fan of this type of grate from an aesthetic standpoint. I just don't find it looks quite as nice. It's easier to clean, but kind of moves around in here a little bit. And also when you have a scale on here, it will bump back against this lifter piece here. So I get why they've done that to give it a little bit more commercial of a feel. Not my favorite part of the Plus upgrade. Besides all that, functionally, performance-wise, internals, we are basically exactly the same as the regular Ascaso Steel Duo. Now, as far as features go, the Duo is overall pretty similar to the Ascaso Uno, which looks the same and costs like $300 less than the standard Duo, $500 less than this machine. The main difference there is going to be that the Uno only has one heating element, meaning that you can't actually steam and pull espresso at the same time. Now, for me, I'm not normally moving that fast, so that's not a huge deal for me. What is a little bit less appealing about that setup though, is that one heating element kind of has to change temperatures between steam and espresso. It'll need to heat up to do steam and then cool back down to do espresso again if you're doing drinks back to back. Now, you can work around that, but it's just one more thing to think about. And the other difference is actually, in my opinion, kind of the sleeper feature of the Duos, and it's right here. this water tap. This does not come on the Unos, and if you really love Americanos or long blacks, this is a lovely little feature. You know, many boiler machines that have a water tap, it will come right off the steam boiler. So you open the water tap, this water kind of flash boils and comes out, and it's way too hot for an Americano, and you just end up using a kettle anyways. Out of these machines, it comes out at like perfect Americano temperature. So I really like that. Then below the Uno, you have the Dream, which is basically an Uno in a different case and at a lower price. All of them have the same heating technology, and as long as you're looking at the PID models, which are the ones that have temperature control, they all have more or less the same features too. Okay, so before we get to tests and like some negatives of this machine, I'm going to give a couple little tidbits to people who maybe already own this or are about to own this machine. Number one, PID, the temperature control for the espresso. You just hit this button on the left here, and then you do the button on the right, and then you can go up or down by degree, either in Celsius or Fahrenheit, depending on what you're set to. To access the other settings, you want to hold this button and then press the other one for 3 seconds, and that will display setup on the screen, and then you can cycle through several other options with these kind of confusing abbreviations. Now, I do have a video where I go over my recommended settings to kind of get you started with this machine using this display panel right here. So if you want to get into that, I will leave that video right here. If you want the Coles notes, I'm just going to pop it right here on the screen, and you can pause it and look at that. You can also adjust the machine pressure with this little screw terminal that's hiding under here next to the group. Now, I do go over that again in a little bit more detail in that settings video, but it should come set from the factory to somewhere 11 bar, which you'll be able to see on here. Now, you might think, Justin, I keep hearing about like 9 bar espresso. Shouldn't I change that to 9 bar? And I'm actually going to recommend that you don't do that. What I would suggest instead is that you coarsen your grind a little bit, try and pull another shot, and it might go up to like 10 and a half bar, but then it should kind of start to drop. It shouldn't just sit there at the max pressure of the OPV. That will be a little bit better of a way to run this machine when you're treating your OPV kind of more like a fail-safe rather than an active part of how you're managing your pressure. And why that's important is due to several little quirks with how the machine is designed and built. Number one, it's built with what's called a vibratory pump. And on those types of pumps, you can't actually adjust directly, very easily anyways, the amount of pressure with which they're pumping. What you're doing when you're adjusting this screw is you're adjusting what's called an OPV, an overpressure valve, or you can kind of think of it like a pressure release valve. So once the machine goes over a certain amount of pressure, this valve is going to tick open and it's going to divert some water back into the reservoir. Now, vibratory pumps can be really great. They actually have this nice slow ramp up to pressure, which can make things, you know, if anything, a little bit more forgiving when you're pulling a shot. I'll often use something called a press sensor to measure this, and you can actually see its ramp up when you're using this tool, but it does have that trade-off of needing to use overpressure valves to create a pressure ceiling. And the way that those valves are plumbed into this machine is a little bit quirky within the big picture. See, what happens is first the water will kind of get pulled out of the reservoir. Then it will go through something called a flow meter on its way to the pump. And that's actually what it uses to set its volumetrics. So when you're holding this button down and programming how much water you want to come out with a certain shot, that's where that sensor is. Then it will go through the pump. Then it will go past the OPV valve before it goes into the heating element. So in some ways that's nice because it's not sending, you know, hot water that's right off the group head, maybe got some coffee grounds in it, back into the reservoir. It's relatively clean water and cold water that's going back into the reservoir. But the trick is the flow meter has already counted that water as a part of your programming. So it's making it through, getting counted as being part of your program, but it's not potentially always making it in your cup, especially if you're hitting up against that OPV ceiling. Now, I know that's a little bit technical, but if you're looking online and you see people complaining about their volumetrics not being accurate, not getting consistency cup to cup, almost guaranteed that is what is happening. And it's for that reason that I really recommend with these machines trying to hit the right pressure by navigating it with your grind size. You know, if it's running a little too high pressure, just go a little coarser. And if it's running too fast, then you maybe want to go a little bit finer on your grind. If you can do that, it's really going to improve the quality and the accuracy of your volumetrics. A little quirky of a design choice, don't really know all the reasons that went into making that decision. I'm sure there are some. It is the way it is, and as long as you're aware of it, you can work with it. Okay, so before we get to some negatives and compromises with this machine, let's talk about some performance tests. And there's some really great stuff here. Volume-wise, numerically, you know, when I went to measure it, I was actually finding this machine very quiet. You know, when I was pulling espresso, it would come in somewhere around 55 to 60 decibels. It's very quiet. Steam is even quieter, coming in at like 45 to 50 decibels with just the chug of that pump. Now, you'll see people complaining sometimes online about the quality of the noise. They'll say it's a little rattly, or that chug of the steam pump. That in particular will throw people off. Once you get used to it, it's fine. It's not that loud, and in my opinion, it's not even that unpleasant. Now, as far as like actual vibration, it does vibrate a little bit. You know, this top is kind of sloped backward, so if you're putting any cups on here, they're definitely going to kind of slide down to the back. And even on here, you know, if you are using a really light espresso cup, it can move around on this platform here as the pumps are running. Now, I didn't have any kind of silicone pad under this when I was pulling there and it didn't move, but it is something that can happen. Performance on milk steaming. This machine is definitely not going to give you the power or speed that you're going to get with a big double boiler type machine. And that's just because it's vaporizing that water on demand rather than building up all that pressure ahead of time and just kind of keeping it available. That being said, I find a little bit less juice on steam can actually make it more forgiving and easier to use in some ways. You know, it gives you a little bit more time to kind of get your vortex right and, you know, get your integration right and figure out how exactly to get that right texture in the milk. I would find to steam like a 6-ounce drink, it would take me like 35 to 40 seconds. And when you turn the steam off, you will see some kind of steam kind of coming out of the back of the machine. That's very normal. Get asked about that a lot, but that is just kind of how the machine works. Okay, temperature stability. And this is really impressive. I always test temperature stability when I get an espresso machine in here. I use something called a Ascaso device. It's an industry standard for testing temperature stability on espresso machines. And I'm always curious to see how a machine is going to perform. These machines, all of the steel line actually in the Dream as well, they're extremely temperature stable. Some of the best machines that I've tested in this regard actually. Once they're heated up and at temp, I was finding, you know, over the course of a standard espresso shot, it would take a second for the water and everything in the portafilter to kind of get up to temp. And then once it was there, it was hovering, you know, in around, you know, a degree plus or minus, which is a very fine tolerance. Now, if you run really long shots, like over 30 seconds or something, it will start to dip at the end there, but over most applications, extremely stable. Now, as far as getting it up to that temperature, this little light here will kind of start flashing anytime the machine needs to heat up. And it will tell you that the machine is fully heated up after, you know, 2 minutes. And you can pull espresso at that time. In my experience, it's not quite hot enough at that point to get the best result. A big part of that is your portafilter also has to warm up a little bit. Now, it does have an actively heated group head, which is definitely going to really help out the process. But I was finding that generally, you know, for it to be fully hot and preheated, you know, somewhere 10 minutes or between 10 to 15 minutes was a little bit better of a sweet spot to get the accurate, consistent results that these machines are kind of known for. I did find though that there was a temperature offset. And basically what that means is that the actual measured temperature at the group, again, measuring it with the Ascaso, was a little bit lower than what this was saying that it should be. I was, in around 4 degrees Celsius. Some people say 5. On the last machine I tested, it was closer to 3, but there is a little bit of an offset there. Now, a couple ways that you can manage that. You can go into the settings and you can actually tell it to offset the temperature by, say 5 degrees seems to be an average that a lot of people use online. Or you can just turn up your PID a little hotter. It's the same effect either way. All in all, a little bit of offset, that's a pretty normal thing with any espresso machine. The actual stability though, how much it's going to fluctuate over the course of a shot, that's where this machine really sets itself apart from some of its peers. So we have a lot of great stuff going on. Solid performance, very robust feature set, great espresso, good milk steaming, but there is a shadow side to any product, especially one this complex. So what are the things that people tend to take issue with the Steel and the Steel Duo? First and foremost, this is a big one for anybody in North America. These machines come outfitted with a 20 amp plug, which is a little bit beefier of a power requirement than your standard household outlet. It's got this funny, looks like a winky face. And unless your kitchen has been specifically outfitted for 20 amp, you might find yourself in a position where you can't actually even plug the machine in. Now, most new kitchens come with this type of power, but definitely something to check first. You can go out and get an adapter for this machine that will kind of slip onto that and let you plug it into a normal plug. And this machine actually shipped with one. I don't know if they're doing that with all of them, but I tried this. I ran it full out, espresso and steaming at the same time on a 15 amp circuit, and nothing blew, and it was okay. So, I'm going to say probably Ascaso wouldn't recommend that, but you can get away with it in a pinch. That quirk with the way they have the plumbing and the flow meter and the OPV, for me, that's a bit of a negative. I just find for people who don't have their heads around how espresso machines are plumbed, which is honestly most people when they buy an espresso machine, that can just make for a really confusing experience when, you program it to do a certain thing, and then the next time you tell it to do that thing, it seems like it just is doing whatever it wants. So that's something that I really wish Ascaso would change how these machines are plumbed. Vibration is the kind of thing where you see, people online complaining with that a little bit. It's not the end of the world for me by any stretch. That chug sound too of the steam pump, that throws people off initially sometimes too. It's just kind of this, you wonder if the machine is malfunctioning sound. You do get used to it though, for sure. Again, I'm not totally in love with this drip tray. It does make it easier to clean than the other one, but just like aesthetically and finish wise, not totally my thing. And on that note, actually, with this color in particular, black and white are super sharp. You can wipe them down with a wet towel, no issue. This thing, I've had it around for a few months now, and I am just polishing this thing like all the time to try and keep it clean, because I just am like that a little bit. A wine glass sham is something that I use a lot on this to try and keep the fingerprints off, but like every time you touch it, you're leaving a fingerprint on it. And so, if you're not into that, maybe choose another color. It does look sharp though, I have to admit. And then there are some QC issues, quality control issues. And this is something that you'll turn up a lot if you jump online and you start digging through forums. People will order an Ascaso, Duo, Uno, whatever, open it up, super excited, and there's an error code right out of the box. And that is a disappointing and frustrating experience for anybody who buys something this valuable. Now, very often it's error code 1, E01, it will show on there. And that's actually a pump prime error. And you can actually reprime the pump fairly easily. If you're running into this, just drop me a comment or fire me a DM on Instagram and I can help you out with this. But a lot of people just see the error and they think, I'm just going to return this thing or get a different one or whatever, which is totally justifiable. There are other errors too that can pop up. Ascaso went through this period where they really kind of grew in popularity over a very short amount of time. And at that point, you really started to see a lot more of these quality control issues just kind of slipping through the cracks as they were trying to scale. Now, in the last couple of years, I've seen that a lot less, but you will find that a lot online when you go digging. Now, I've worked with the Espresso Parts team across many different product lines for many years, and I know their support team is fantastic. So if you get one in the US, and you run into any issue, just fire them a message and they will help you out. The nice thing is those issues tend to be in the minority, and when people get these machines and there's no issue out of the box, they work great, they tend to work for a really long time. You know, when people come to me and they say, Justin, my budget is X, I'm looking to pick up an espresso machine, what do you suggest? You know, I'm always keeping my eyes open, my ears open for the next best thing. This is what I do. And whenever people's budget is kind of in this zone, these machines, the entire line, they're just such an easy recommendation, and they're just such a nice machine to use. They're user-friendly, and the performance and counter appeal is just so good that they're very nice to recommend. You know, you get great temperature stability, very feature robust, good steaming, fit and finish is fantastic. You know, I've got a La Marzocco on the counter back there, and still to this day, Sarah, my wife, will often say to me, you know, I really miss having that Duo on the counter. You know, they're just these very nice, charming machines that make very good coffee. If this video was helpful, I would love for you to subscribe to my channel. Honestly, it's the best way that you can support me making more of these reviews. And I'd love to hear your thoughts actually on the Duo Plus in the comments. And if you're an owner of the Duo or the Duo Plus, then make sure to drop your experience down there, because that's always something that's really helpful for people to hear from when they're considering a machine like this. However you brew, I hope your next cup of coffee is fantastic, and we'll see you next time.